Pixar's latest is hitting theaters. Should you go to Coco? We'll let you know right here on Screen Junkies News. I'm Dan Merle, and as always, I apologize.
No, never apologize. I'm Roth Cornett, and I love the pun.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah.
It makes me think of a song. You know what else there are songs in?
Coco.
Yes.
It's a good one. It's a good segue.
It was all right. What did you think?
I like this movie a lot. You know, with Pixar, a lot of times when they do 2 in a year, it's like kind of one on, one off. Inside Out and Good Dinosaur were kind of, Inside Out was great. Good Dinosaur, not so good. This year, I think they might have flipped it because Cars 3 I thought was okay. This movie I really, really liked. It is back to their root of very emotional story, a very personal story, very sweet story. I like this movie. I dare say more than I thought I would because there really wasn't a lot of buzz going into this movie, and what little I did hear wasn't necessarily great.
You know, it's interesting because I think this movie is a case of me overthinking how these things are structured.
Yeah.
In the sense of when they are released and how they are released. And because Coco was, this was actually pulled in theaters in Mexico and put behind the film, but was set to be released with Olaf's Frozen Adventure ahead of it. And it was quite a long short. Now, Pixar always has a short, but this is a long one. I thought, oh, I wonder if they're just trying to get people into the theaters with that film, the short film, because Coco's not very good. And the truth is, Coco is fantastic. This is a beautiful film. I really love this. And they rarely have depicted humans as well as they do in this film, Pixar.
Yeah.
And of course, the undead.
If you don't know,
well,
it takes place, the dead. It takes place on Dia de los Muertos, which is the Day of the Dead in Mexico. That's one of the things that I loved about this movie was, you know, culturally, people get different kinds of education. I knew about Dia de los Muertos, but I didn't know, you know, I grew up in Arkansas, and you kind of learn that it's like, you know, it's like his Mexican Halloween. It takes place around the same time, and it's very similar, but they don't really go into a lot of the details, especially, you know, when I was in school 20 years ago, probably more than they do now. And what I love about this is that it educates you on what that day is, what it means, in a familial sense, in a cultural sense, why it is so meaningful, and not in an educational way, but in a way that sets up the stakes for the story. And really, the stakes of the story are rooted in how meaningful this day is culturally to this particular family, but you know, in general, to families in Mexico and everywhere across the world that celebrate.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I loved was how this movie was in a way educational. I certainly learned more about the significance of that celebration, but also for this movie. Why it is so significant and where the heart of it is rooted.
Yeah, I'm going to do a little self-correction here now that I'm running through Pixar in my head. Up, fantastic.
Yep.
Superheroes, superhumans, and Incredibles. And this is the story at the root of everything. I'm just saying they have done humans well. But at the root of every one of their stories is this idea of either a created or an actual family. And how family functions together. And this is certainly no more true than in this film, which really is not just about family, but what creates family, your history, your ancestry, and how important that is. And you're right, you do feel like you get a glimpse into a holiday that we don't necessarily celebrate here. You get to understand that significance. It's certainly a fantasy, and so it does what Pixar does so well. It takes you on an adventure into an unknown realm. There are high emotional stakes in this adventure. And at the core of it, you have this character who wants to answer a calling he feels inside, because that's the other root of these stories is how do you become the version of yourself that you really want to be and still honor those that you love around you, which is a struggle that many people have. And certainly he wants to be a musician that artists have. All of that is richly depicted in one of the most, and I'm going to use the word sumptuous, visually sumptuous films I have seen this year. I just wanted to swim in these neon colors.
Beautiful. I mean, beautifully rendered, beautifully designed, and you have this young boy Miguel, who kind of takes this otherworldly journey into this kind of hidden world. Pixar just keeps upping their game on a design on the design front, and I feel like they did that with this movie. I mean, just the way that it's rendered and the geography of it and how it's built and the colors, as you said, but also just the functionality of this world, and it has its own kind of special rules and its own way of working and its own kind of society, and it just really, they did it in such a creative way.
Yeah.
I thought it was so well done and so original, and again, it surprised me how little buzz was kind of coming off of this, because I feel like you get that usually with a Pixar movie, especially one I think as good as this one is. And I don't know if this one had that, and it should be getting that buzz, and I think it's going to once people see it and go see it with their families.
I think that's what it's going to be. I think that critics are going to come out, and already have come out, very strongly in favor of this film, and then it's going to get tremendous word of mouth, because you're right, the secret world of is also the thing that they do. Like, let's get a peek behind the secret world, and they take it, and it's gorgeously rendered here. I will say one of the questions a couple of people have asked is like, what age range is this appropriate for? And I will say there were one or two events, plot points in the film that do go to a relatively dark place.
Yeah.
I still think it's okay.
Yeah.
I think it's okay for 5, 6 and above.
I don't think it's something that's going to upset younger kids in the sense of a Bing Bong, for example, and Inside Out. It's not that kind of thing. I think it's something that younger kids just might go over their heads, or they might be curious about it. I don't think it's something that's going to upset them. I do think this is a movie that is appropriate for all ages.
Yeah.
You know, it's complex, but it's not so complex that, you know, a 4, 5, or 6-year-old is going to be lost or confused watching it.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. For me is like, and this is why these animated films are the classics that they are.
Yeah.
Because as an adult, you're looking at this in terms of ambition, in terms of very complex human drives, ambition, love, desire to be greater than you are, all of these things, betrayal, you know, forgiveness.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I think that you're sort of lost in the story and the adventure of it, and this boy's adventure and what he's after. And there's a couple of twists and turns in terms of who the characters are to each other that as an adult you can see coming. It's fine.
Yeah.
But I heard a little kid behind me in the theater go, at one of the moments of revelation, and I was so happy to hear that, because it's for them.
Yeah. That
is for them, and the other stuff, the sort of complex emotional relationships, that's for us.
That is for there's definitely some twists and turns that as I was sitting there going like, okay. But you're right, that is for the kids, and there is definitely enough there for the adults. I mean, this has a huge emotional punch to it. What I also loved about this, and kind of building on what I said before, was the way that it treats Mexican culture. And I think that this is going to expose that culture to a lot of people. This is a Disney Pixar film. This is the big family movie coming out over Thanksgiving weekend. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to learn about what this celebration means. But it's also just about the role of family in Mexican culture and the significance of it. And I think a lot of people are going to see themselves and their families in this family story. And I think it's really important, particularly right now, for us to look at other cultures and find our similarities. And I think that this movie, I know it did for me. I learned so much about even the deeper meaning of this day. And it's not just a celebration. It is a remembrance. It is a memorial.
It's not so much those who are dead, those who are remembered.
Right, those who remembered, those who are remain, and I think it gets across so beautifully the importance of family, which I think is something that so many people can relate to, no matter where you're from. And what I love about Coco and movies like Coco, Moana last year, when you have animated films particularly, but any movie that can take a culture that people might not be familiar with and draw a really wonderful, heartfelt story. that allows you to relate to that culture on an emotional level. I think that's just good for
the
world, because I think that what we need to be concentrating on what we have in common, and not the differences that either exist or don't, and we're told are there.
Sure,
and I think that's what this movie really achieves. That is this idea of just like, listen, we are all human, and we are all fundamentally, so many of us share the same values, and we hold the same things so close to our hearts.
And you know, I couldn't agree with you more, and I think it's especially important in family films, you know, and well, in all films, but certainly also there, and family films that you're starting out with. But the Pixar, in films like this, what they do is, whether it's about humanity, it's always about that. And it goes to some pretty deep places, whether you're depicting emotions or, toys that act out human dilemmas, or robots or whatever it is. It's always about the human experience, and in a very deep and rich way. So certainly when you're dealing with human beings, it's absolutely that too. Yeah. Where this adds, I would agree with you, is that it shows you that even if you don't have the same sort of holidays or celebratory, like cultural reference points,
right,
or ways of even thinking about death, that it doesn't matter, because you can learn from that, you can relate to that, you can celebrate what is different about you in terms of it's different and beautiful and interesting, and ultimately at the end of the day, you're right, we're the same. We love our families. We want to feel good about ourselves. We want to do the things that we love, and we want to have a place in the world.
Yeah, I think if this movie had been made 10 years ago, this would have been maybe done from a more agnostic point of view, in the sense of just like, it would have been the afterlife, and it would have been a generic American family, and you could tell the same story.
Yeah.
I love that studios like Disney and Pixar and other animation studios and movie studios are saying, we want to frame these stories around other cultures, because, they're just as significant in their cultures as it is in anyone else's culture, and this global view, and just the human experience, not one slice of the human experience.
Well, I'll say, this is coming from a deeply personal place in a way, but I will say this in the way that I don't know that, for me, it is very interesting and a unique way of looking at things like death and remembrance, because I personally, my family doesn't have that sense of history. A little bit, but not as much as in this character in this film.
Right.
That sense of everything that has come before to make you you, and there was something so appealing about it. I wished, as I watched it, that I had that sense of myself and my place in the world.
Yeah.
So I actually think it's offering a point of view that I'm like, wow, that's really beautiful and great, and it's not something that I have experienced in my life. Maybe others have. But it's all. But I do understand that desire.
Yeah, and I just love any movie that can use this opportunity with this audience to potentially build bridges between cultures. I think is a great thing. So yeah. Coco, big recommendation for me.
I hope this does so well at the box office. I hope that everyone goes to see it. It's a beautiful film visually, in terms of the story, in terms of the performances. It's got some great music.
It does
as well.
Yeah.
I cannot recommend Coco enough at all. Yeah.
Go see it. And go see a bunch of other movies that are coming out that we've reviewed and are reviewing. We're getting into the holiday season. I know we keep saying award season is right around the corner, but it is literally right around the corner. The Independent Spirit Awards have been announced. The awards, it's all happening right now. So be sure to stay tuned here on Screen Junkies News, and have a happy Thanksgiving holiday weekend. Or if you're not in America, have a great Thursday.
Have a great Thursday. And the next few days after.
Yeah, exactly. We'll be around too. Plenty of stuff coming from Screen Junkies News. Until next time, thanks for watching.
Click here for more awesome Screen Junkies news, and click the logo to subscribe.